So one of the next things that pops up is the movie Blade. And this was just like, I mean, I will never be able to stop talking about how good that movie was and just how good the vampire treatment in it was. Like, there was so much good stuff in that movie. But one of the things that it did was, whether or not they actually were sitting there in the art department with an open book of, Vampire the Masquerade and were like, oh yeah, something like this. Or it just sort of seeped into what they were doing. It's very clear that there was some inspiration taken from Vampire the Masquerade in the fact that...
And Blade is post Lost Boys, right? So there's a little bit of that coming in too.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Because Lost Boys was, I want to say 1987. I think. Yeah, and Blade would have been 93, 94?
Sounds about right.
So Lost Boys in turn, there was definitely that aesthetic and that feel to it that had a major influence in Vampire the Masquerade, and then it all kind of like stacks up moving forward. And Blade definitely did. I mean, yeah, exactly, like the motorcycle, the leather jacket. So what you wind up with is this movie where the vampires are no longer, like, Blade is not fighting Dracula in a big cape conspiring to drink somebody's blood, and like, whereas that was what Blade and Dracula were doing back in the Tomb of Dracula comics.
Sure.
But now you've got the vampires are these sort of worldwide kind of puppet masters in a way that the living world is not aware of. Only Blade and Whistler and a couple of other people, even know that they're there and are sort of silently fighting them. But also the Vampire Council is broken up into all of these vampire clans that all sort of have different physical characteristics and different global outlooks.
Gee, where did they get that idea?
And I will never ever point a finger at any of the people who worked on that movie and be like, you stole that's not, because that's, I don't know if I mentioned that when I came in here, but I work in the movie industry. And so I know how these things kind of come about. And that is when you put a group of people together to work on a creative project and you have a script and you're like, this is what's going to happen in the movie. We're going to be rewriting the script. There's some things we're not happy with. We're going to keep, sort of working on it. But all the department heads need to get started on, what does this movie look like? What does the costuming look like? What is the set design? What's the aesthetic? What's the camera work going to be like? What is our feel here? And what happens is, instead of the director saying, I want this to be World of Darkness, but with Wesley Snipes, you instead have a large group of people who go out into bookstores, and the internet was around at that time, but it wasn't like there was a huge web presence of websites or anything like that. So you just have people who go out and they just start looking at stuff. They just pick out books. They have, production assistants who go to Barnes and Noble and just buy a huge stack of books and bring them back to the production office. And people start going through them. They're also looking at fashion magazines and all kinds of stuff. So they're gathering inspiration from all of these different places. But it's very easy to see how, if you walked in the door with a Vampire the Masquerade rule book that has all of Tim Bradstreet's artwork in it, that would be something where the whole crew would kind of like sort of look over everybody's shoulder and be like, oh, that's interesting. We could do something like that, but with a different, and when you see a picture of a vampire with sort of like tribal tattoos on them, you're not necessarily like, hey, concept artist, do that, but put it on Wesley Snipes' head. It's more of a, oh, you know what? The concept artist did a cool thing with like tattoos on Wesley Snipes' head, but like maybe we're thinking about it in the wrong way. Like maybe we need to think about it in more of an abstract form, or something that's kind of has more of a sharper feel, something like that, something like this, that this evokes. Like this is, and what it comes down to is This right here is the feeling that I want people to have. And so there's, I feel like it's unfair at any point to like point the finger at like
No.
David Goyer or Stephen Norrington and be like, you copied Vampire the Masquerade. Like that definitely.
And I'm being cheeky when I said, gee, where did they get that idea? But of course, there's something to be said for cultural osmosis, that whatever
100%.
inspired Vampire the Masquerade was around when Blade was coming out. And what they were tapping into, whatever was going on in the culture at that time, you know, these flashbacks to leather jackets from the 50s and things like that.
Absolutely.
Would have influenced the same people. So yeah, of course, there's always room for people existing in the same culture to have similar ideas and not necessarily be copying each other. Exactly. It's suspicious. And I wouldn't be surprised if there were some VTM fans who worked on Blade, but that's not quite the same as saying, you know, they ripped them off completely.